Now, if you spent any time on the internet looking at Falcons lately, you'll have noticed that quad halos go hand in hand with having Japanese wheels on your Skits Falc. So, how do you get these headlights? Where do you get them from? How much do they cost? And other questions like that answered here. I have retrofitted my own standard FG headlights to have quad projectors. Here is the stuff that I've learnt whilst doing that. There's a bit. So yes, this is a standard Mark 1 XT headlight assembly, Mark 1, and I've got 4 projectors in it, because retrofitting headlights is actually a really big business. There are people who will do any kind of headlight out there. There are people who will do far more intricate and interesting stuff than just putting a couple of RGB switchback halos in your headlights. There's some wild stuff out there. But as we all know right now, the gold standard for having a good looking Falcon is 4 projectors, halos on them, on its guts, Japanese wheels. So the first thing to decide when retrofitting your own headlights is what kind of projectors are you going to put in here. Now, I'm going to be a massive simp for Morimoto HID in this video. Morimoto are easily the leading brand when it comes to buying the parts to retrofit headlights like this. I've got their projectors, I've got their halos, you know, using all their controllers and stuff like that. I've got a DRL strip that I'm going to put down the bottom or maybe the top, I don't know, at some point in the future. They are easily the highest quality out there when it comes to this sort of stuff. So yeah, they cost a lot of money. I've paid over $2,000 at this point in parts for my headlights, but you can get all of this sort of stuff going a lot cheaper than that. So the first thing to know is that the projectors usually are designed to fit straight into where you would normally put your headlight bulbs. So obviously for Falcons, you'll be looking for projectors that are H4 and H7. Now the low beam projectors that I went with are these ones from Morimoto, and the high beams are these ones. Now you'll actually notice that these high beams are too big for the H7 spot, and so I did actually do modification to make that fit in. I'm not sure if I've got footage of that, but that did involve having to do a bit of drilling and filing and getting a hole in the correct spot big enough to actually slide the thread through to mount these correctly. The next thing to decide is whether or not you want RGB or just white halos. Now both pairs of my halos are switchback, but the ones that are on my low beams are the RGB ones, and the ones on my high are just white and amber, and that's it. I actually find that I very rarely, if ever, I can't remember the last time I actually changed the color on my halos at all. It sounds cool and all to have, you know, have some RGB halos, but really, unless you've got a particular color scheme you're going with, I can totally understand that then. If you might have a green or a red Falcon or blue or something, you know, an actual color, but because mine is just silhouette, white actually works best with mine, and so I actually find that I don't change the RGB. You also can't drive around with the color being different. It has to always be white, and that's it. If you've got any colors going on, you'll get yourself in trouble with police, so keep that in mind. Morimoto actually have a great feature where any of their XB LED lights, you know, halos, the DRL strips, anything like that, demonized, they will all, when they turn on for the first time, when you turn the car on, they will all turn white and be white and amber only, and you'll have to open up the app using Bluetooth to change those colors manually. That way you will avoid accidentally having your lights being the wrong color and, you know, driving around town with red or blue lights flashing away and getting in trouble for trying to impersonate police, something like that. The last thing to consider is, what do you do about wiring? Now, there is a whole video's worth of stuff of just wiring for these things alone, because if you think about it, I've got wiring to do each projector. The bulbs for each projector has its own wiring. If you're using HIDs or Xeons, you've got ballasts and things like that to think about as well. You've got to find a spot for them. You've got to wire them in correctly, make sure that's all safe as well. There's obviously wiring for each halo here. If you've got demonized in the projectors, there's wiring for those. If you've got DRL strips somewhere, there's wiring for those. Every extra thing that goes in here is extra wiring to think about. And so that is a whole video on its own. And I think I will record a whole video wiring up my car for the controllers and the converters and all that sort of stuff in the future, because for this one, we're just going to talk about just the assemblies and what I've learned retrofitting my headlights myself. So the first problem that you'll run into is these are not heat sealed. If you look up how to open up headlights on Google, you will find endless information on baking them or using heat guns to open them. None of that works with this. These are perma-sealed. Ford has done their absolute damnedest to make sure that you cannot modify or repair or do anything with your headlights yourself, and you have to buy a whole new headlight assembly. Now, you can buy products from companies like Morimoto. They do have a perma-seal remover now, and they do have tools for that. I'm just gonna put that out there. I haven't used them myself, but I would really like to in the future, because I think I will be opening up another set of headlights in the future and maybe some tail lights and doing some retrofitting with that. But there are options for that, or you can just do what I did and just pay somebody else to open them up for you that does this sort of stuff normally. Whether or not you're able to find a company or someone who retrofits headlights who's willing to only open a set for you, that's a whole other story. So from here, I'm gonna open up the headlight assembly. I'm gonna show a couple of things. So to make it easier to see what's going on here up close and personal, I'm gonna use my GoPro. So there'll be the camera over here and there'll be the camera over here. And we're gonna talk about everything that I did and what I've learned whilst retrofitting these headlights myself. So here is the clear part of the headlight assembly. We'll take a moment to just quickly have a look at this. As you can see, it's held on with just a handful of small plastic torque head screws. The inside of these is very soft. You don't want to touch the inside of these at all. If you even use a microfiber cloth on the inside of one of these, you will scratch it. There is no getting the scratches out once they're in. And if you scratch them too badly, you're actually better off just throwing them out and getting a whole new headlight assembly. That is probably what I will end up having to do, because I have spent several years with these things opened, not sealed correctly. So lots of dust and moisture and all sorts of stuff has gotten in here and scratched the headlights to absolute hell. So I would highly recommend that if you're going to retrofit your headlights yourself, you get all of the stuff necessary to do it, and you get it all in and the headlights resealed as quickly as possible. Don't put them back in the car like I did without having them resealed. Have them sealed, have them safe and all ready to go before putting them back in your car. Now you'll see that I've obviously removed this trim from mine and sprayed it black, color matched it black, as with the rest of the trim inside the headlight is all black to try and match the rest of my car. You'll see that this plastic trim on the inside, I've actually removed the high beam one because that was in the way when I was trying to get the high beam projector shroud in. Now the rest of the headlight assembly, I got my low beam and my high beam projectors. So there is usually a threaded mount on the back of the projectors which will slide through where the bulbs would normally go. You obviously have to do a little bit of assembly, disassembly rather, on that reflector, and then you can slide the projector in, and there's a nice screw that will usually screw down onto the thread and hold it all in place and hold it straight and make sure everything is all correct and how it should be. Now I think I said earlier that this one was not a straight fit and done. This required some drilling and some filing and other modifications to fit it in. It also required cutting some of the back of the assembly. Basically this bit here, this part here around the edge needs to be actually cut back. You can cut that back using a Stanley knife or maybe a Dremel bit, but this actually will need to be cut back if you want to be able to get your headlight bulbs in properly, because it's a hell of a mission to get your fingers in there and screw headlight bulbs in correctly once you've got this projector fitted, because that is all the way back in there. You can also see that inside the driver's side reflector, I've had to drill a hole there. So that's for the halo on the low beam projector. There's a hole drilled in there so that way I can actually get the wiring for that and feed that through into the back of the headlight assembly. Getting the projectors in, if you get the right ones for the bulb type, is very simple. They tend to slide in fairly easily. Very little modification is usually needed. The biggest thing is the shrouds. The shrouds actually can be cut with a knife, a Stanley knife, and you'll need to cut them a fair bit to actually get them to sit nice and flush with the rest of the assembly. As you can see, I've done a bit of a shod job, but you actually can't see that once the rest of the headlight assembly is together, because it's obviously covered up by the plastic. Now the reason to trim these is so that way they'll fit flush and straight on the headlight. If you don't trim them, they won't fit inside where the standard reflectors would go, and you won't be able to actually get shrouds on your projectors, and it'll look pretty ugly without having shrouds on. One of the other things you'll have to do is on the inside of those shrouds, you'll actually need to Dremel out or use a Stanley knife to cut out some space for the wiring for your halos if you've got halos. Now, the projectors have a little mounting system for the shrouds, so that way the shroud can just fit over the projector and kind of clip on. But given that Australian roads are usually fairly bumpy and nasty, I actually have found a continual problem where the shrouds have popped off, particularly my low beam one, because it is a little bit tighter than the high beam one. There's a lot more space for it there. It can kind of move about a bit more freely, but the low beam ones I've actually glued on to the projectors semi-permanently because the shrouds just kept popping off of the projectors using the standard mounting system. So keep that in mind. You may need to permanently adhere the shrouds depending on what setup you go with. Obviously, you don't want to get any glue on this glass on the outside or the inside at all. If you get glue on here, if you get scratches on here, you might end up destroying a several $100 set of projectors, and that's money in the bin, just down the drain straight away. The halos as well can also be attached just using some small thread or something like that and drilling some holes. But personally, I think the best option is to get 80 or 90 millimeter sized halos and to glue them directly onto the shrouds. Being plastic, you can use some glue that is going to be fairly easy to break later on if there is some sort of need for some reason to remove the halos or remove the shrouds. I've just used some 2-part epoxy on mine, and it's actually very easy if I needed to, as I might in the future. I can quite easily pull these shrouds off and I can just give them a bit of a squeeze and the halos will pop straight. It'll crack all the glue and the halos will pop straight off. If you want things like demonize, you'll need to have separate brackets that attach to your projectors and make sure that your projectors can accept those brackets for those bulbs for the demonize, and you'll have to find where to run those wires as well. Maybe you want DRLs as well. You'll have to find where you're going to run those. You can choose to do what I've done and actually remove your indicator, because these are switchback. So these will turn on and act as indicators instead of having that tiny little halogen bulb there. If you do that, you'll need to find a way to plug that, or maybe just not have the bulb in the plug and have that in. That way it's nice and sealed. If you want to have DRLs or anything like that in the headlight assembly, that might be somewhere to have the wiring for those extra lights run out through there, through a rubber grommet or something like that. So talking about the halos, these are the XB switchback halos from Morimoto. These are the RGB ones, and these are just the white and amber ones. The Morimoto XB halos are far superior to anything else I've seen on the market so far. Most other brands, especially the cheaper ones, especially the sort of stuff you'll get off eBay, you can clearly see the diodes of those LEDs running all the way around the projector. They're a lot lower quality. Usually they're not as bright as well, so you won't get that nice solid ring like what I have on mine using cheaper ones. But if you just want to get some basic halos going, some projectors going, you can choose to just spend the $40 or $50 on cheap eBay projectors and then just get some cheap eBay halos, throw it all together for a couple $100. Frankly, with the cost and effort that it takes to get a set of headlights opened up or open them up yourself, and then for the modification that will be required to do all the wiring, running all the wiring through this assembly, getting it all through your car and wiring it all up correctly and safely through your car, I would honestly say it's worth spending the extra money to make sure you have the highest quality stuff inside your headlights, rather than cheaping out on some eBay spec stuff that might end up burning out and breaking within a year or two anyway. But anyway guys, that's all I got for you today. This is all the stuff that I've learned whilst retrofitting my own headlights. Don't forget to head to fgmods.com.au, grab the shirts, the stickers, there's brand new banners and everything in there as well, all that sort of stuff. Don't forget to leave a comment, subscribe. If you're watching this on Facebook, make sure you share it, all that sort of stuff, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.